we are in our first week of our new academic year of C2G. And what we're going to do at the beginning this time is you're going to be getting a concentrated dose of me for the first 3 weeks, and then you'll get a break from me for a good spell. So I'm going to be doing actually a three-part teaching that is ultimately overall about being called to be healers. Tonight, I'm going to be talking about our need individually to accept God's healing. But the title of my sermon here is I Am the God That Healeth Thee, which is a song we're going to sing. Also is a quote from Exodus 15:26. And then next week, I'm going to talk about healing one another within our fellowship. And then on the third week, I'm going to be talking about how we as a group of people, as a fellowship, can be agents of healing for the community. So it's starting individually and moving outward. And this is a topic that I've been thinking about for a long time, this need to be healers. And I had, at our planning meeting, I had recommended starting off on this vein because I think that we could all agree that it's something that we all need, and it's something that the community needs. We need God's healing. There are a lot of broken people out there. There's also a lot of broke people out there. But sometimes, you can be broke and not be broken. Being broken is much worse. And many of us here, I'm sure, at some point in our lives have felt very broken. Maybe some of us feel broken right now. So the question is, how can that break in our spirit, that crushing in our spirit, be mended? And of course the short answer is we need God. I think too that I can speak for all of us here, all of us that have come together for this emergent thing called C2G, that we want this group and this place to be a place where God's healing can flow. We want it to be a place where God's Spirit can flow. We want it to be a place where God's love can flow. We want it to be a place of sanctuary. Of course, sanctuary means an especially holy place, and most churches, including this one, has a special place designated the sanctuary. But sanctuary, because of its association with church down through the years, has also come to have another meaning. That is the meaning of a place that you can go and be safe. And I think that indicates, really, that holiness and safety go hand in hand. A holy place should be a safe place. And that's something that we want to make C2G, because, like I said, we need that. We individually need it. Our community needs God's healing. Now, there is an agency of healing, a tool for healing that the Bible mentions a lot, that is actually a physical, specific thing. The balm of Gilead. And I love that expression of hearing about that. Actually was a substance. It was a fragrant medical resin taken from the gum of certain trees. It's related to myrrh. So it smelled nice, and it felt nice, and it was something nice to have when you had an injury that you could apply to that injury. It's really in the form of an oil. But I also, when I think of the balm of Gilead, I also, even though it's not related, I think of aloe. You probably all had some experience with aloe. When you burn yourself, for example, and you apply that straight from the plant, it has an immediate effect. It has a very soothing effect. It makes things feel a little bit better right away. I think it's interesting, too, to note that in the Bible, this was something that was greatly valued. It was a highly prized commodity, and it was traded in the ancient world. In fact, the caravan that was coming through, and Joseph's brothers had put him in that well, and then they sold him into slavery. They were carrying balm of Gilead for trade. So, in a way, symbolically, since I was a double major in English doctor. I look for symbolism and things. Even as traumatic an experience as that was for Joseph, right there in that caravan he was sold into, there was the instrument of healing. And we know the story. We know that it resulted in a big healing. Also, I guess from my English background, when I hear the term balm of Gilead, I think of something that's not biblical at all. I think of a reference from one of my favorite 19th century poets, Edgar Allan Poe, and The Raven. Before I closely read that poem when I was in high school, and I had only heard snatches of it quoted here and there, I thought, ooh, that's a scary, spooky, mysterious poem. And it is in some ways. But those of you who have read it and are familiar with it, you know that it's actually, there's a lot of symbolism there. And that raven could be regarded as symbolizing the grief and pain of the narrator of the poem, right? He's this guy who's grieving over his deceased love. And then this raven comes in and sits there on the bust of Athena, or Pallas, and basically tortures him by croaking at him and repeating things. And there's one particular stanza from the poem that I'm going to read, which goes, "Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, whether tempter sent or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore." Quoth the raven, nevermore, right? So he is asking symbolically of this symbol of his grief and pain. He's saying, is there going to be healing for me? Will I be healed from this pain? And of course, the raven says, no, you will not. All right? Now, many of us who have experienced the grief of losing a loved one, especially if it's sudden and unexpected, in my experience, that makes it a lot more traumatic. And the feeling that you have can be a feeling of such intense suffering and intense wounding of your heart that it feels like there will never be any healing for this pain. And it could never possibly get any better. And that's what, of course, the narrator of this poem is saying. But what a lot of folks don't realize is that quotation from Poe is in itself a quotation. It's an allusion to a scripture from the book of Jeremiah. Jeremiah chapter 8, verse 22. And in that part of Jeremiah, the prophet had been talking about his people and how they had fallen away from God and how they had a spiritual sickness. They had a spiritual malaise. And the prophet says in verse 22 of Jeremiah, is there no balm in Gilead? So the Pope thing is a quotation from that. Is there no physician there? Why then is there no healing for the wound of my people? Now, Jeremiah is saying, my people are sick. My people have been sick for a long time. They're spiritually sick. Don't you have a doctor? Don't you have balm? Don't you have medicine? And the answer was that yes, they did have a doctor and they did have medicine available. They just had not taken advantage of it. In fact, a few chapters later, Jeremiah in 17:14 says, heal me, O Lord, and I will be healed. Save me, and I will be saved, for you are the one I praise. So he's saying to God, if you heal me, then I'm going to be healed. And God was, in fact, the great physician that the people should have been turning to, but they had not. So there is a balm and there is a healer available. You just have to make use of it. In James 4, verse 8, James said, come near to God, and God will come near to you. So that sounds pretty simple and straightforward, doesn't it? If you have a spiritual sickness, if you have an injury, God will heal you if you just approach him. So that